Hi, today we're at RSPB Minsmere in Suffolk, and it's very early in the morning, about 5 o'clock. You can arrive whatever time you like at Minsmere. There is a visitor centre which doesn't open till 9 or 9:30, but you can get here early and come in anytime you like. And we've come onto the east side of the reserve because that's where the sun's coming up and it's going to be behind us. And we're going to start off with the first session in the East Hyde. Now, there's not many hides on British nature reserves that are good for photography. Hides are built for bird watchers, and generally speaking, from photography, they're in the wrong place. They've got poor backgrounds, or the direction of the light is wrong, and generally speaking, you're too far away. But this is one of the exceptions. It is a good hide for photography, especially flight photography in the spring, and lots of action too. You've got all sorts of species interacting with each other's, waders and waterfowl fighting, squabbling over territory and space. The hide has two floors, an upper and a lower, and since I'm primarily interested in flight photography this morning, I've come upstairs. If I was just wanting to do the other sets in the water, which are right in front of us now, probably downstairs would be better. It's a difficult hide to get a tripod in. Just about do it, but the bench is fixed, so it makes it awkward to spread the legs out, and you have a very wide shelf here, but the shelf is low, so you can't get a beanbag on the shelf either. You could put a beanbag on this shelf a bit higher up, but it's a bit inconvenient, so mostly you're hand holding here for the flight pictures. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. We've got the place to ourselves at the moment, but that won't last long. There'll be other photographers along soon. Typically by 9 o'clock I've finished and I move on to something else. It gets a bit crowded. It's a popular hide.
Immediately in front of the hide there was a black-headed gull's nest, and it was very noticeable that they were behaving in a repetitive way. The one bird would stay on the eggs while the other would fly off, grab some nesting material and return. And they're coming in from the same direction every time because they're flying into the wind. And when you've got something that's repetitive, it's a good opportunity to do flight pictures, because they're going to come in on the same flight path time after time. You're prepared for it. So the bird flies off. Now the amount of time it's away from the nest could vary. It could be 30 seconds or it could be 10 minutes. So you had to stay alert and watch out for the bird coming in, but it always comes in from the left hand side and takes off into the wind on the right hand side. Shutter speeds, you want 2,500th of a second. That's always a good starting point for birds in flight. So all of the pictures are taken with the Sony A1 and the 200 to 600mm zoom lens, sometimes with a 1.4 extender on. But the bird comes in from the left hand side time and time again. Slight disadvantage that the bird sitting on the eggs has got its back to you. You really want that bird either facing you or sideways like this. Makes a much better picture. Sometimes the sun is shining, sometimes it's overcast. But with a white gull against grey coloured water, it doesn't really matter. You can cope with the whites in the gull so long as the water behind it isn't too dark. But certainly this nest gave me plenty of opportunities for pictures and kept me entertained. Sometimes when the off-duty bird went away, it would have a bathe, and whenever you see gulls or ducks or waders bathing, you should be prepared that they're going to jump up at the end or stretch the wings at the end. And so as soon as you see one bathing, you want to note the wind direction, because they're always going to open the wings towards the wind, and then prepare for it. And here we have a male shoveler sitting not too far away from the black-headed gull. And shovelers can be quite aggressive little birds. So it went and had a quick bathe, and then again stretched its wings facing into the wind. And there's the nest with the shoveler just off to the left hand side, and then this caught me by surprise, caught the gulls by surprise as well. It went up to them and attacked them. So they can be quite aggressive, shovelers. The gull is big enough to take care of itself. It let out a squeal, but then turned around and had to go back at the shoveler. But the shoveler wasn't finished. It then went up to a mallard and had a go at that too. So the East Hyde is very good for this sort of action and behaviour type photography, especially in the spring, but potentially all year round. So, having had a couple of little skirmishes, sits back for a rest and then flies off. The Sony A1 is amazing for its flight photography. My Olympus with video mode was absolutely hopeless for focusing, but the Sony at 4K 120 frames per second video will focus, not as good as it will focus on as a stills picture, but that was a common turn, and they just hover in front of the Hyde several times. But again, the wind has to be in the right direction because they're going to be facing into the wind. But this happened several times during the session in the Hyde. Again, 2,500th of a second would be my starting point. Oyster catcher flying towards the camera, but I got several frames of it sharp, and then another skirmish, black-headed gulls and oyster catchers. When you've got a lot of birds all nesting in the same area, there's often these territorial disputes. And this is another species that's very prone to being aggressive, the shelduck. And it's a very common sight in the spring to see pairs of shelduck fighting each other. The male and female from one pair and chasing another pair. Here, this is a male chasing a female and possibly courtship rather than aggression. But one bird landed right in front of the Hyde, and then another bird come in from its left and barged straight into it. Very, very aggressive. But in the same way that coots fight each other in pairs on city parks, very common to see two pairs having a go at each other. A gadwall in flight, always rather drab looking duck. And lots of avocets. Wasn't that long ago when this was such a rare wader, but now they are found in front of hides on many nature reserves. So if I was just after portraits, I'd be better off downstairs getting a lower angle, but it's easier to do this sort of photography where they're fighting each other from the higher level of the Hyde. You just get a better viewpoint. But this skirmish went on for several minutes. And again, it's quite common amongst avocets to see them fighting and pushing each other under the water. Black-winged stilts do exactly the same. More slow motion video. Now above the racket of the gulls you can also hear another sound. That's other people's shutters going off. Other photographers have arrived, but it's nowhere near as crowded as I would have expected it to have been.
So I've come out now and I'm going to make my way along the east bank, and it's full of gorse bushes and patches of heather further down as well. It's a very good place for photographing small birds. They're very used to what is normally a lot of bird watchers walking up and down this path. I don't know why it's so empty today, but I'm going to enjoy it. And linnets, whitethroats, wrens, dunnocks, they all sit about on these bushes, quite used to people, and it's a good place to photograph things like that. There's also Dartford warbler here. You don't see those so often, Probably February will be the best month for doing that. Dartford warblers will start to sing in February, and what they tend to do is they pop up onto a gorse bush or some suitable perch and they sing very briefly and then they pop back down again. But if you see a Dartford warbler sing on one perch, it's well worth just standing there, because within the next 30 to 60 minutes they're going to come back. They have a circuit of perches they use, and if they've used it once, very good chance they'll come again. They're so used to people here, they just come right up to the path. But February going into March is the best time for that. They're a little bit quiet now. I have seen Dartford warbler but not photographed it.
So here we have a wren singing its heart out. Followed by a linnet, which didn't sing for me. But the reason the bank is so good is you've got that little bit of elevation, so you can be slightly up the slope looking at birds on top of the gorse like this dunnock. And also if you're lower down, sometimes you get a green background instead of the sky. But I'll just finish off with a common whitethroat, and thanks for watching.